is Couchbase. You've got Cassandra used by some other players, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. And one thing we are experiencing we go into organizations to figure out why people are not getting the ROI from their investment. Most of the time, organizations think they don't have the right tool. They have a Hadoop cluster. They have put, through Hive, they have put, like, let's say, connection to Pentaho, and they're like, it's not working. My realization, as I've looked at n number of these, is that it's not that the technology is failing, it's that people are not, the information architecting is failing. So a lot of times people are not thinking about what do they need, what kind of answers do they need upfront to design the right information architecture. So in my experience, the technology is there, but it's more that the work of information architecture is not being done, which is where the big failure is happening. So with that, let's move to our audience. I want to ask each one of you to talk about what does all this mean to professionals like we have in the audience. We have about 20% folks who are on the data side, about another 20% who are on the engineering and development side, another 30%, which I saw, was on the business side, business, product and marketing, so on and so forth. And then there are some professional services folks. What does that mean for them? How are roles evolving, long-term, short-term, if you could share? So we'll start with you.
Sure. So, the obvious one is data scientists, right? The demand for a data scientist, if you look at some of the analyst figures, in next several years, and the supply, there is going to be a tremendous gap. I mean, there are very clear indicators that you could be an individual contributor and make an executive compensation if you are a really top-notch data scientist, and that's reality, right? That's happening. I'm actually involved in some situations where people are buying some companies just because they have data scientists, right? So that's definitely one key area in terms of where some of the professionals can benefit. Now, if you just look at the size of this market, as I mentioned before, based upon several other reports, including Gartner or Wikibon, it's going to grow from $1 billion, $2 billion to about $53 billion in about 5 to 7 years. There is opportunity for everybody, right? There is opportunity for everybody. This is a classic market where every VC's dream, right? Because they think it's a big enough market for many players to succeed. And so anytime, there is a technology shift, that creates an opportunity for somebody to be an early adopter as a professional, no matter what function you are in, and essentially change the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the McKinsey report and said there's currently a shortage of 190,000 analysts. So definitely there's a shortage of skills out there in the market today. You mentioned data scientists, and just to maybe dig in a little bit what a data scientist is. I think it is quite a unique role. It's someone who has the business acumen to talk about the business and understand what their goals and their opportunities are. At the same time, be mathematical and be statisticians, so they can dig into the data, find out what is relevant, what is statistically valid. At the same time, they're still developers. They still need to be able to wrangle the data. They need to be able to manipulate it. And we just talked about those tools are coming out, and sure, there's going to be a gap, and those products will be helpful to doing that, but they're not here now. So some of those tools are still pretty raw. It's Python code. So
Peter, you're saying all of that, one person should be able to do all of that. So we're looking for superhumans, essentially.
Superman.
Ideally, one person like that's productive. If failing that, then you're just going to need a very close cooperation between your analysts and your engineers. But anyhow, we can't all be data scientists. And to your point, I think that same McKinsey report said there's going to be 2 million. The big data was going to drive 2 million jobs by 2015. So yeah, there's roles for all of us. For engineers, I think that means learning the new technologies. Finding out about Hadoop, learning about Storm and Flume. Figuring out how these things work. And I think for the rest of us, the business folks and the lawyers, I think people have said it before, but we really are on the era of more data-driven organizations. So I think that just means all of us are going to have to be more familiar with data, more ready to access data, more ready to go to data for our decisions. Your dream as a schoolgirl, I think your story, less gut, more data. And I think for us in the room right now, what it means is we all have the opportunities to be leaders and champions within our own company. We all have the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I think we can improve this business. I think we can save some money here. I think we can drive some new revenue over here. We just need to get access to our data. Just go with your own companies and make it happen.
Yeah, there is one interesting quote I just wanted to add based upon what Peter said. The quote says, the only way you can overrule hierarchy is by bringing data to the table.
Let's hope that's true.
So I call this Silicon Valley 4.0. For those of you who are as old as me, remember we went through the Fairchild era semiconductors, then we went to the PC laptop era, and then there was the Ethernet era, right? The Netscapes and the Googles and Yahoo. And this is really the big data Silicon Valley 4.0. You're going to, and we're just scratching the surface. So many interesting happening. For those of you who are following Twitter, there are companies which are basically analyzing that data, and they can make some really interesting decision, like which movie is going to do better than the other one. So you tell Disney to go spend $30 million so you can, out-tweet the other guys and you have more people going to you, right? Again, I talk about retail analytics. So there are people who are watching your cell phone each time you walk into a mall, and they are basically tracking your behavior. How much time are you spending at Starbucks? Where do you go after Starbucks? Why do you come back to the Starbucks, and so on? So, and then the big thing we're going to see is that advertisement is going to push to you. You pass by Starbucks and you're going to see an ad from Pete's which says, you know what? There's a Pete's next door and there's a 20% discount, and we know you love coffee. Come on over, right? So we are just scratching the surface, and next 3 to 5 years is going to be very interesting.
So look, this is a plug, but I'm going to be talking about this topic in Predictive Analytics World in April in San Francisco. So just allow me 5 minutes, Bianca, because I want to give some 3 minutes. Because this is an important topic, and I just want to give some practical tips here and my view on this whole data scientist thing as well. So firstly, for the for the business folks or the entrepreneurs, perfect time to start a startup in the big data space. We see money just waiting to be given. Okay, so go for it, especially real-time analytics. Okay, it's going to be super hot. Look at what happened with Splunk. Now, coming from analytics, let me just give you the context behind data scientists. It's being made out. It's not a whole lot different from the analytics, the advanced analytics folks that used to be, but there is a twist, and here's what I mean. There are a lot of folks, the banks, insurance, and so on, who've come from a world of, let's say, being used to working with, let's say, SAS or S+ against a relational database, right? So SQL was good enough to do the data munging, right? Suddenly, we're in a world now where the analysts need to start looking at different sources and different format types. And, we can't be in cruise control anymore. And SQL is not enough, okay? Now, I disagree that we need Java and so on. So I'll tell you what you really need to be a data scientist. And why do you hear that curiosity is suddenly this biggest thing there is? I mean, look, at the end of the day, exploration and curiosity, which is one of the defining characteristics, by the way, of a data scientist today, every analyst has needed to be curious and to explore the data. But more so ever before, the reason is because you have a new world of data, if you will. You suddenly got text data, the command prompt. Like, how do you deal with text mining or processing? That's a new skill. Exploration is crucial because you cannot say, I'm going to jump into model building mode. Like stepwise regression, for instance, for those who I'm talking about. So even more so, that's why people say stare at the data and find patterns. Okay, so that's the context behind what's happening. So in terms of practical skills, here's what you need. R is no longer a nice to have. You absolutely need it, and you can pick up R very easily. It's not the easiest language to learn, but it's open source, it's free, and it's just basically the data mining tool of choice. Okay, so R, the statistical language R. Python. Again, for those of you who don't know, online education is booming today. You can learn Python for free from scratch. So you have these MOOCs, right? Massive open online courses. Coursera.com, Udacity.com, and now you have EDX, EducationX, and others that will follow. So Udacity has a class called Computer Science 101. They will teach you Python from scratch. You'll be an expert when you get out. You'll be building a search engine, a web crawler. It's really going to help you in the market. And by the way, you should change your title to data scientist and get a pay raise when you leave. So R, Python, machine learning. this is big. Machine learning was always cool, and artificial intelligence was always, it didn't quite live up to its potential. But machine learning today is essential, because when you want to do something at scale, be it personalization or otherwise, machine learning is what's needed. You can learn machine learning from scratch very easily through Coursera.com. There's a course taught by Andrew NG forget his last name's pronunciation. And so it's just machine learning. So sign up for that, you'll come out, and people have actually won Kaggle competitions. Kaggle, you know Kaggle, the crowdsourcing competition that they have? They didn't know machine learning. They went to Coursera, learned machine learning, and went and won these competitions. So what I'm trying to tell you is, push yourself proactively, okay? Learn machine learning or Python and text mining. Text mining is crucial. Why? Because most data is unstructured. It's ironical, most data is unstructured, yet when I speak to folks, do you have text mining experience? They go, nah, right? So you gotta need it. That's it.
I wanna add something else. As an executive in resident, I see a lot of great technology. There's a piece that unfortunately a lot of entrepreneurs miss, and that's the business model. How do you make money out of it, right?
So don't follow Sameer's advice and go.
No, that's all
do
great.
a startup, but think about
I strongly believe to do that, but also think about, cool technology is fantastic, but how do you make money out of it? And there is a lot of technology out there which is not as cool, but these guys are making a lot of money out of that. Give you an example. I saw a great company which looks at the pictures that we take. If you look at my iPhone, I have 500 pictures all mixed together, right? And they, look at the distance between people and what's in there, and they categorize this automatically for you. And anything with a picture of mother-in-law, they automatically move it in the trash can. So it's like, this tool is fantastic. And then for the lawyer in the back, there's a lot of issue on this data. Who owns it? And what can you do with this data? And can you really track those people in the mall, right? Why is it all these guys are going to the Victoria's Secret store, right? And that is a big issue. And this is a wild, wild west. So for the lawyers, there's you could become an expert in big data, and all these entrepreneurs will come to you.
I need to say one more thing. I'm sorry, this is important.
Sameer is hogging.
I'm going to shut up after this, but this is important. Yeah, I was talking about if you want to be a data scientist from a technical angle, obviously business domain, business knowledge, communication, visualization exists otherwise. One important thing, get on LinkedIn user groups, join meetups. Seriously, you have Big Data Cloud, there's a big sign there, they use this room. Join Big Data Cloud. The Hive, for instance, is a very good group to learn and have sessions with big data. And just stay on top of blogs and things like that. So I just want to mention that as well.
That's great. I'll add a different perspective here. I have two masters. Both of my theses involved applied statistics, and actually, in fact, the funny thing is, I learned nonlinear regression before I learned linear regression. So in the contorted world of academia, it's how it goes. When I graduated with my master's degree, I just loved these techniques, and you give me any problem, I wanted to solve it with the most complex algorithm I knew of. Last 15 years, I have evolved, and here's the evolution. My experience is that 70 to 80% of the business problem, which can be solved using data, can be solved using simpler techniques of aggregate analysis, correlation analysis, you have trend analysis, and sizing and estimation. So imagine that, and that is all doable in Excel. We pull the data and you do it, and it's all learnable by every individual, and that's what we teach. Also, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is, data scientists in the McKinsey Big Data report, 190,000 data scientists. The gap of 190,000 data scientists, but 1.5 million business professionals who can do something with the data. So that is still 10 times more. So as a business professional, if you are sitting on the business side of it, I would almost not encourage you to go and take the data mining courses on Coursera. They are great courses, but they are obviously hard to understand and how to get it. But the problem is, even if you succeed in acing it and building Kaggle models, what can you drive with it? And I can tell you from my experience, 70 to 80% of business impact that gets driven by data, problems which can be solved, gets solved by simpler techniques. So I have a different point of view here, and I think that's kind of my...
You're absolutely on the dot. The Coursera stuff, I wasn't talking to the whole audience. You're absolutely right. I was talking about more, the analytics folks who want to become data scientists, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add is for entrepreneurs, right? When you guys talked about technology and what people can adopt, which is great. But I think if you are thinking about starting a new business or a new venture, the infrastructure space, to some extent is getting saturated at this point. So what you have to look at is vertical industry specific use cases and applications, and that's where the biggest value is. That's where you actually connect with the business problem and their industry and what they're
And I
looking
can't
for.
agree more with you, Naren. I think the biggest gap is not in the technology side or there's enough and consulting companies and technology companies and tool companies. I think the biggest gap is connecting that dot from what is really the big rock for the organization and how do you kind of turn around your strategy to really get the ROI from the data. That's one place which is missing, and doing that in an industry specific is going to be very helpful. So if you were to look at healthcare, for example, and if you have a solution for healthcare, strategy, big data, how do you leverage data to make decisions, that would be much more, it's a sweeter spot. Great, so moving on, I have one last question before I ask each one of you to summarize with the key takeaways. I think Nader was talking already about the future, about, as you're passing through Pete's and getting coupon. I want to ask each one of you, what does future look like to you? What does it feel like to you? And we'll start with you.
Okay, go ahead.
Was that me?
Let's start with Naren.
Okay, so to me, how you consume, how you shop, how you purchase products, right? That is going to completely change. We will get a lot more personalized offers. People are talking and already looking at micro-segmentation or looking at really targeting you as an individual instead of really trying to do broader segmentation. So we will receive a lot more real-time offers, which will be very personally catered to us, our propensity, our behavior, and so forth. That's kind of number one. How we consume content on media, whatever the media is, will completely change. It will be a lot more personalized. That's kind of second thing. The healthcare will also dramatically change because now you have these smartphones and you can track somebody's vital signs 24/7 for an unbiased sample, right, of a large population, and you can actually predict what can happen and what cannot happen, and do preventive things. I think healthcare is going to change. And the last but not the least is we will all lose our privacy.
Agreed.
Well, that's a question of whether or not we've already lost our privacy or not. I'd agree with all of those, and I think that if you think about it, we really are on the kind of a dawn of a new era. I think that big data definitely has the potential to change our lives as much as the internet did, but perhaps even more. I think that I'd be disappointed if it was only just how I saw media and how I got offers online. I think the impact is going to be even larger than that. Granted, health is a pretty big one. I think we're at the beginning of, we're only scratching the surface. You mentioned about the Internet of Things. You just imagine all the possessions and all the things that you can have sensors in. How many things do you're not monitoring yet? They're not being adjusted to your preference in real time. So I think there's enormous potential there. And I also, you had mentioned the Obama campaign, and I don't know if anyone was at Strata this week, but I listened to the chief data scientist for the Obama campaign speaking, and you mentioned some of the things they did, which was pretty interesting. The thing that really left me, the last impression that left me was something he talked about was basically what they were doing was understanding who was persuadable and understanding what was important to them, and then giving them the information that they needed, which actually is pretty good. I think the question was, was this a good thing or a bad thing for democracy? And I think he made a good argument that it's actually a good thing for democracy. And actually the next step is, well, imagine all the other social problems. Imagine all the other challenges we as a society have and how big data can contribute to that. I mean, that to me is even exciting. I mean, I might not be quite as idealistic as Bono. I don't know if you saw that MIT tech review where I think Bono said, big data was going to solve global politics. I don't think he exactly said that, but something to that effect. But I definitely think big data is going to be more than just a consumer offering. I think it's really going to change a lot of things, and I think it's something to look forward to.
So one comment on Obama and Romney situation. So what Romney ended up doing is the classic. Yeah.
I think back is
you want to switch mic?
Switch mic. Yeah.
So essentially what Romney did was the classic segmentation, right? What Obama ended up doing is micro-segmentation, targeting individual, and really figure out who can be pursued. That's it. I mean, just from a marketing perspective.
So I agree with what the panelists are saying here. I want to focus on one really interesting market, and that's sports. As you all know, 49ers are building a big stadium here, which is being backboned by Cisco. Cisco is going to put wireless everywhere, and they just signed a big deal also, I believe, with Sony, that you could also have what they call the second screen. Not only you're watching what's happening on the game, you can see all the stats and so on, right? Now, I work with an organization where, again, they're working with, sports analytics for soccer and football. And, originally, going back to the business model, their idea was that, okay, our customers are going to be coaches and players and so on. So who do you think is the number one consumer of sports? No. Anybody else? Come on, guys. Gamblers. Yes. I mean, if you take a look at betting, if you look at, for example, European soccer, which they call football over there, each game has 50 bets going on. Who's going to throw the first ball? Who gets the first red card, and so on. And that's huge business. Huge, right? I mean, look at fantasy football and so on. Where's all this data coming from? And how do you aggregate it? And how do you give it to all the people out there? So, again, we're just scratching the surface. The opportunity is huge. And you take any of this and you focus on, you will do really well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that I said. The world's going to change in so many different dimensions. It's sort of tough to pinpoint one or two, but I'll talk about a couple, which is, I'm a big fan of Star Trek, The Next Generation, and I see that as basically becoming reality, thanks to big data. I also saw a TED Talk last year on augmented reality. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's a display of info on reality, right? And I think that's absolutely going to happen thanks to big data, be it on some glasses or your smartphone or something. So and life's big data, I think, is going to tell us what we don't know. It's sort of. I was mentioning the car example when I began, and it'll probably tell you, hey, you want to watch this movie based on your preference, or do you want to go to this restaurant and this, So there's so much the world is going to change on so many different dimensions. Now, from an analytics standpoint, by the way, the chief analytics officer is going to be very commonplace. I see that happening because you're going to have analytics really sort of being elevated. So I just want to call that out from a personal analytics lens. But yeah. What's going to change?
One thing I want to recommend, we talk about Obama and so on. There's a gentleman named Nate Silver, I believe. He wrote a really good book last year, came out, called Noise and Signal. I highly recommend you guys read it because it's just like, wow, look at all the things we can do with data, all the way from earthquakes to election to baseball and so on. I mean, again, the opportunities are infinite.
Yeah, Nate is a great guy and a great speaker too. So, one thing I was thinking as I look at future, and I was thinking about in what ways is it personal to me. So I was a panel speaker at one of the recent GigaOM panel talk about big data in the world of healthcare. I'm just thinking, really healthcare would be transformed when I control my own health-related decisions, which means to me, imagine that, right? And I go in, I get, I have some problem. I have constant headache. I get blood pulled out and so on and so forth. A data report comes back to me and says, such and such a thing is wrong. And it also not only just tells me the report of, A, B, C, vitamin A, D, whatever else, but it also kind of runs a algorithm in the back and says, most likely you have this. Second, most likely you have that, and then I say, oh, all right, I like this particular, you are low on vitamin D or something like that. Okay, yeah, I think I like this. Can you send this recommendation to my doctor? The doctor says, yeah, go for it. And I order. Just that to me is real, and that is what I am in the middle of my own. I control my own healthcare versus what it is. So that to me was kind of real, and I hope it happens as a result of.
By the way, healthcare. Just talking of healthcare. It's a fascinating area of big data as well. I don't know if you guys are familiar, Mayo Clinic had this whole human genome sequencing project, which is a pretty big deal. I mean, they're looking at cancer patients and taking snapshots of all their bone marrow cells and so on over time, trying to figure out why patients are resistant to chemotherapy drugs and so on, and how to come up with new drugs. I mean, it's all a lot of data. It's all big data related. So
yeah, there was yesterday on KQD there was a talk on genomics and how whether there was a big discussion on whether gene sequence modification for on your unborn child, how is it ethical or not, and so on. But it was fascinating to think what's possible that you can actually change the genes which are responsible for cancer, let's say, which you might have predisposition for before before the child is born and so on, or before even conception. So it's crazy. With that, we are coming to the end of panel discussion. What I want from each one of you is to, we've talked about for an hour, each one of you, if you could summarize, your top 3 takeaways from this discussion, so the audience knows where we stand. So we'll start with you.
my top 3, so I guess one would be hype, right? I mean, as we talked about, there's a lot of hype, and the honeymoon is getting over. But look, this is a long-lasting marriage. It's not a fad. So that's one. Second, data scientists. It's smack in the middle of the world of big data. And I would say third is speed. Speed is a new key theme, because, like I said, things are moving to real-time streaming and real-time processing and analysis of real-time data.
Yeah, so I go back to what I start my talk is those 3 buckets, right? The first bucket, again, starts with data, type of data. Again, it could be from human language, it could be pictures, it could be voice, it could be graphics, it could be a database. So again, you all could really do a lot just understanding the data itself. Then all the infrastructure we talk about, right? What do you do with this data? How do you aggregate it? How do you synchronize it, and so on? And last but not least is the analytics, is the prediction, and so on and so forth. So if you look at all those 3 buckets, there are lots of opportunities there. And somebody again talked about the VCs and so on. I mean, I know VCs that they're focusing only investing on big data. So whatever business you have, repackage it, call it big data, and chances of getting funded is pretty high.
I think the first takeaway is value, and I think we talked a lot about that analytics, big data, data scientists, it's not very valuable unless the business is getting value out of it. That's a bit of a tautology I said there, I realize, but yeah, so value is probably the most important one. Second is data scientists and the shortage thereof, and how critical that is. And I think the third takeaway would just be that I think 2 million, what was it called? 2 million, 1.5, and I think something that you said that's going to have an impact on all of us. And I think there's being able to access and deal with data is something that we're all going to be doing a lot more.
So to me, the top 3 things, as takeaways are something that would actually be the foundation of the growth of big data would be, the first one would be essentially the collaboration between IT and business to really find that 1 or 2 use case which drives the value, pretty much what Peter was talking about. The second key to me is real time. And especially industries like retail. For example, if I go to Apple Store, buy an iPhone, and if that transaction is not up to date, updated in my profile pretty much in real time, you miss opportunities to do upsell. Offer another product like the iPhone case or accessories or whatnot, right? So real time really is going to be key, because most of the data growth is unstructured data, which is social or locational or contextual, and that data is very short-lived in terms of its value, right? And so real time is key. That's kind of the second point. And the third point is, because of the shortage of data scientists, and also because of a ton of incomplete data that is being generated, machine learning is key. To make sense out of that, large array of incomplete data and still make reasonably accurate prediction, I think machine learning is key. So those are my 3 key takeaways.
Great, and I'll add my 3 here too as well. I think number 1 for me is to recognize that the true value, the ROI from big data can only be achieved when you start from the big rocks for the organization. When you understand the big priorities for your organization and lay out a strategy of what is missing, what are the insights you need, and then reach out to data. So that's number one for me. The other one is related to what you were talking about, the 1.5 million business professionals. I think the world of tomorrow, whether you're a marketing person or a product person or operations, you can no more choose to ignore data. You will, by will or by force, become part analyst. So be prepared for that. And part analyst doesn't necessarily mean that you will be doing data mining as Samir is talking about, but part analyst means that you should have the ability to understand what is the question you're trying to solve, to understand for you to, what are your hypotheses, what is the data you need, and then what do you need to do with that. So, and it's not complicated, it's learnable, but be prepared for that, that's happening. And the number 3 thing is related to what Samir was talking about. Big data is a hype, but actually it's a good thing. It'll change our life for the better, and that I believe. Great, so with that, let's open up the conversation to our panel, for our audience. Let's start with you.